Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Storm, and just as the title of the video says, I'm going to talk about Doctor Strange, the movie. I actually get to see it opening day with a friend of mine, which I'm actually kind of proud of. I don't usually get to see a movie opening day, except for maybe The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I did a video on that too. Uh, I went to see the movie with a friend of mine, Nixon. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here to do this video with me. That's fine, though. He had other stuff he had to take care of, so I'm just one by myself as usual. Uh, Now, Doctor Strange is a character that I've always had a passive interest in, but I've never really gone too in depth with. I've always been a big fan of magic, so I've always been interested in Doctor Strange. That's one of the main reasons I wanted to see the movie. But again, I don't know much about Doctor Strange to begin with. I don't read his comics too often. But after seeing this movie, I definitely will be looking more into his stuff. Uh, so if what little I did know about Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange, is that much like with Tony Stark himself, he's very much a narcissist. He's very egotistical to the point that, well, really, it's part of his character. To the point that Strange, being a very famous neurosurgeon, being a very skilled neurosurgeon, he would only take surgeries or any cases like as if he's a lawyer that would bring the hospital he works at any sort of fame or money, or bring him any sort of fame and money, which kind of shows. You look at his apartment, very lavish, very decked out in lots of expensive things. He has like a grand piano in the middle of the room, and a drawer full of watches on a rotating stand. Uh, Shows, I guess, showing off is a very big part of his personality too. In the movie, as he's performing a surgery, he actually has one of the people in the OR with the phone plugged up into a speaker playing music to kind of as a cocky boost to Strange's ego. Again, he's that confident in his skills that he can pretty much do whatever he needs to do, or do whatever he wants almost. But again, despite his skills, despite his ego, he would never take any surgeries that weren't worth it to him, that wouldn't bring him any fame or glory, or the hospital any fame or glory. Probably just more so himself fame or glory. And again, that's part of his character development. That little I do know. So, in the movie, much like in the comic, Ash Strange is out for the night driving. He gets into a car accident that completely shatters his hands. And as a neurosurgeon, or a surgeon in general, that fucks him completely. Strange needs his hands to do surgeries, needs his hands to work, and now he can't because of the accident. After the accident, he was put in the hospital recovering. They had to put like so many metal plates and bolts into his. I don't know if you can put plates into someone's hands, but there's so much metal in his hands completely. Fixing them, yes, they can move, they can clench them, uh, but his hands are pretty much useless now. For a surgeon, anyway. Actually, even beyond that, as a matter of fact. There's a part in the movie where he's trying to write his name, trying to recover writing his name over and over again on a piece of paper, but he just can't do it. It's all scribbles, completely. Part of it, again, Paul Strange's backstory, which they got perfectly in the movie, thankfully. Which, interesting to note, I actually expected to sit through maybe 30 minutes, if that, of well, I guess the entire beginning of the movie is setting a backstory, but I honestly expected to sit through maybe 30 minutes setting up Strange himself as a person before the accident happens, and thankfully didn't have to do that. Granted, 10, 15 minutes tops before the accident happens. And again, the accident is part of his backstory. That is part of setting him up as a character. But still, I was glad they kind of just got to that part faster than having to sit there waiting for so long. So again, Paul Strange's backstory is that after the accident, he just blows through whatever money he has, trying to find miracle cures around the world, different surgeries, even sort of weird therapeutic stuff that can help him. Nothing works. Just nothing pulls through for him. Until doing one particular intense case of physical therapy for his hands, he hears about another patient who had gone through a similar accident to Strange, had nerve damage in his hands, his spine was completely shattered. one of his legs wasn't working anymore. So this particular patient uh, left the country after trying so many different physical therapies. Went to, well, in the comics anyway, Kathmandu. Strange went to Kathmandu to. Okay, well, whatever. Um, where Strange goes in the comics is in Peru. I have no idea what Kathmandu. Yeah, damn, I should pay close attention to that part. Well, anyway, Strange looks up this former patient who was so injured, and then somehow, miraculously, can walk again perfectly. He's normal again. So Strange looks the guy up. He gives him advice to go to where he went to, which is Kathmandu in the movie, and find this place where he found the cure he needed. And as Doctor Strange quickly learns, it's not science or any sort of medical help he's looking for, it's magic. He talks to. He encounters Baron Mordo while he's being robbed almost. When Strange gets to Kathmandu, he's accosted by three delinquents. They try to steal his watch from him. They don't think he has really left anymore. Again, like I said, he blew through all of his money. He's practically homeless now. So this is his last shot, going to Kathmandu and hopefully finding a cure for his hand so he can get back to work. He's accosted. They take his watch. They break it in the middle of the scuffle. Baron Mordo, a sorcerer, defeats the three hoodlums and returns Strange's watch to him and leads him to where the shop he needs to go to. Strange meets the Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme at the time anyway, which for the movie, in the comics, the Ancient One is a very old Asian man. He's called the Ancient One, and he very clearly looks it. But in the movie, they had Tilda Swinton play the Ancient One, who in this incarnation is a woman who looks fairly youthful. I have no idea how Tilda Swinton is, honestly, but for the movie, the Ancient One looks fairly youthful, even though she is older, obviously. I don't know, I kind of wish they kept the Ancient One and an old Asian guy, honestly. Strange's encounter with the Ancient One, kind of typical for you, what you expect. Strange walks into the room and thinks that the old Asian man sitting at the desk is the Ancient One. In actuality, it's one of the other master sorcerers there at the Sanctum Sanctorum, or no, the Sanctum Sanctorum is, I forget it. The training grounds. Let's just call it that. The place has an actual fucking name, but I forgot what it's called. So forgive me, I don't remember what it's called. So let's just say training grounds for the time being. The old man that Strange was addressing was another master sorcerer at the training grounds, and the Ancient One was actually the woman pouring him tea, Strange tea. And of course, it's the whole, oh, yeah, I don't expect you to be the person I'm looking for, sort of situation, kind of like with Luke and Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back. What I find interesting, well, humorous, really. Like, if you ever seen the animated Doctor Strange movie that came out some years ago, it's an animated movie that Marvel put out. I liked it. It was okay. The way Strange encounters the Ancient One in that movie, I thought was more apt than the way he met the Ancient One in this movie, the live action movie with Benedict Cumberbatch. In the animated version of that, the animated version of that movie, the ancient Strange walks into a small room with the Ancient One, with the Ancient One in it. The Ancient One's back is turned to him as he's tending to something. And at the end of the conversation, the Ancient One agrees to train Stephen Strange. He turns around, and wouldn't you know it, the entire time the Ancient One was actually floating. His cape, his cloak, was reach all the way to the floor, obscuring his body. The entire time they were talking with his back turned to Strange, the Ancient One was actually floating. So when he turned around, like that was the revelation right there. That he was using magic the entire time to float while his cape obscured him. The cat's back in here. Lee just giving the Ancient One an even greater air of mystery and mysticism to him. And so the way they demonstrate the Ancient One's magical power in the movie was for the Ancient One to kind of not exactly get fed up with Strange, but then again maybe she did, by the way she did it. The entire time, Strange wanted a miracle cure. He thought it was going to be some sort of science, medical miracle, but as it turns out, it's just weird mystic mumbo jumbo that he just did not want to hear. So he sat there insulting the Ancient One until she finally just used her magic to push his astral form out of his body, and then sucked him back into it, and then sent his mind on this crazy mystical trip, giving him glimpses of the multiverse, big and small, good and evil, showing him very clearly that there is something beyond the physical world that he thinks he knows. And showing him that instant, both instances actually, shoving his astral form out of his body, and then showing him small glimpses of the multiverse were enough to convince Strange that all of this stuff is true. The magic, everything, it's all real. And initially, the Ancient One refused to train Strange because of his arrogance, because of his ego. But he stood outside the door of the training grounds for 5 hours straight, like banging on and begging to be let back in. And with a little convincing from Mordo, the Ancient One opened the doors back up and let Strange in to train him. Yeah, persistence gets you somewhere, very clearly. And it got Strange, for the most part, what he needed. So that's why the movie is not a montage exactly, but just showing Strange training himself up, learning the mystic arts and trying to slowly get over the injury of his hands. Well, two things. One, it's just that when Strange asks about how he can learn all this mystic power, I can learn the mystic arts so quickly. Actually, maybe not exactly quickly, but just enough, fast enough to fix his hands. Well, the Ancient One asks him back, well, how'd you learn how to be a doctor? How'd you learn how to be a surgeon? And of course, Strange answers, well, just years of practice and study and dedication. And she gave him kind of a look. She gave Strange a look that kind of said, yeah, that's how you're gonna learn this. Same thing. You learn how to be a surgeon through years of training and dedication and study and application. That's how you're gonna learn this. But as the segment of the movie progresses, we see Strange progressing very quickly in his education in the magical arts, very very quickly, which is noted by Mordo and the Ancient One, to the point that Strange can even open interdimensional portals into the library where all of the ancient books of magic are stored, and kind of just nick them whenever he wants to keep learning. My problem with this though is the fact that it's a small nitpick, which I'm honestly just now realizing as I'm doing this video. Strange says that he learned how to be a surgeon by studying and application and all these work. Yet he's then later on in the movie mentions that he has a photographic memory, which is how he's able to take all of his books, the magic books, and even his medical books, skim through them basically, and then pretty much know everything he needs to know. Which does factor in later on into the movie, I just realized. One of the forbidden books he was looking at. Actually, not forbidden books, but restricted book, rather. He was looking at. One of the pages had been whipped out by a former student of the Ancient One, whose name, of course, I forget, Kaladesh, something like that. Kaladesh, something like that. Basically, a student turned evil who had become a follower of the dreaded Dormammu, the interdimensional demonic sorcerer. Strange used the Eye of Agamotto. Any Doctor Strange fans who, or probably any Marvel fan period, if you're a big Marvel fan, you probably at least heard of the Eye of Agamotto. You probably at least know it's the necklace that Strange wears in all of his appearances. Strange used that to manipulate time and restore the pages that were ripped out of the book of the Ancient One's former student. And Strange glanced at it quickly and learned one or two spells from it. But it was very quickly told that manipulating time the way he was doing is strictly forbidden. It violates the laws of nature to just manipulate time that way. Even if it's to restore the apple he was eating a second ago to being a full apple, it was a few bites taken into it. He used the power of the Eye of Agamotto to reverse time for the apple, and reversing it and then pushing it forward, reversing it back to full apple, and then pushing it forward to being a completely eaten and almost completely rotten apple, and then back and forth, kind of playing around like that. Which, just watching that one small scene just makes me wish so much that magic was real. I wish magic was real so much. That's when Mordo and Wong, again, if you're Doctor Strange fan or if you're a Marvel fan, period, you've at least heard of Wong, maybe. Doctor Strange's servant and assistant after he becomes the Sorcerer Supreme in the comics. Wong is the new librarian for the training grounds. The former student of the Ancient One. He and his followers broke into the library. They he did anyway, slaughtered the former librarian and ripped up the page of the book that Strange was messing with. And that's how he learned how to use those dark spells to connect with Dormammu and then pass that knowledge over to his own followers. Okay, so I mentioned his name a few times already. So as if you even needed to guess at this, the villain of the movie, of course, is Dormammu. And the disappointing thing about Dormammu in the movie, the only disappointing thing is two things actually, if I think about it. Well, actually, okay, well, I'll get to that in a second. Dormammu unfortunately takes a back seat. While he is the bigger bad, as they say, of the movie, the bigger villain. The Ancient One's former student, I keep wanting to say Calabec, but he's from DC Comics. That's Darkseid's son, or adopted son, I think. What's his name? Kala something is the actual the primary antagonist of the movie, trying to use the ancient dark magic he learned in order to destroy all three Sanctum Sanctorums around the world. With them gone, the barrier that they generate over the missing barrier they generate over the Earth is gone, and Dormammu can cross over to the universe where the Earth is and take it with him to the Dark Dimension, make it a part of him, of the Dark Dimension. So yeah, that's basically the crux of the movie. That's the plot of the movie, to stop him from doing that, from letting Dormammu gain control of the Earth. And as awesome as Dormammu is, as much as I like him, again, I'm disappointed in the fact that he was relegated to kind of just the backseat of the entire thing. He does get seen in the movie, fortunately. Unlike with Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, where Galactus only had a cameo, unfortunately. They were going to have him in the movie entirely, but they figured they would do a Silver Surfer solo movie, in which case they would just show Galactus in full there. But as we all know, that movie never manifested and probably never will manifest, especially considering how the last Fantastic Four movie had went over with critics and the public. I never did see it, but everyone I talked to says it's horrible. People say it's horrible. I never saw it though. I want to see it though. I want to see how bad it is. I I liked the first two movies. I mean, they're one of the greatest things ever, but I didn't hate them. They probably could have been better though. But I'll talk about Fantastic Four later and the problems with that film series later. I mean, in classic movie fashion, and probably in classic superhero movie fashion, honestly, really, the conflicts came down to just the Ancient One's former student and two of his henchmen. As always, it's always the main bad guy and a couple of henchmen, nameless henchmen. It never just it's always that. That's how it always goes. For a movie that prides itself on being about magic, I just I was disappointed that kind of the just a shallow application of magic. Constantly, we're just seeing powerful sorcerers just create whips made out of magic or light or whatever they are, or the biggest spell they use in the movie, the one big spell that was always used in the movie was just the same folding of space. If you've seen the trailers for the movie, you'll have seen the parts of the movie where buildings are being folded in on themselves, where they're kind of collapsing and restructuring themselves. That was the big spell of the movie, just reorganizing space to bring things closer to you or to bring yourself closer to them or however you want to do it. That was a really big spell of the movie, but it was constantly used over and over again. Not that it wasn't visually, it looked great. It's an interesting spell, but this is magic, right? Like you should be able to do more than just collapse the buildings around you. You should be able to, I do know, collapse them, but not destroy them. After the spell is worn off or forced off, everything goes back to normal. But this is magic. You should be able to do more than that. Why not have the buildings kind of like have creeping arms that kind of stretch out to grab people, or have the floor melt, or enchant items in order to act of their own accord to attack and defend for you, or transform people into objects or animals or something like that, or conjure a sort of creature to help you fight something. That just, and I said like the way they're handling it, it's magic plus martial arts, which I appreciate. I love that. But again, it's they could have done more. For instance, the bad guys in the movie, the only weapons they ever generated were these weapons made out of like water or glass or something. They'll cut their hands together and then create these like spears and makeshift swords out of the same exact material over and over again and use that to fight. And Strange and the Ancient One could create these makeshift shields made out of magic or light or whatever they were to defend themselves and attack with a bit. It was just the same spells over and over again, other than teleportation. I mean, I liked it, I really did, but like, they could have done more, you know? Visually, it looked great, yes, but I mean, this is magic. Do more with that. Like, control the elements or something, fire or ice or something. I think one of the best parts of the movie, though, was probably at the climax. Climax. Then again, I think about what was the climax. The last fight scene or Strange's actual encounter with Dormammu. Well, the last fight scene anyway, we'll say that. Doctor Strange like put the Eye of Agamotto into overdrive and controlled. He turned back time for this entire small Hong Kong city or area, really, where the Hong Kong Sanctum Sanctorum was rested. He turned back time completely to reverse the destruction of everything that the last few sorcerers who were trying to defend the sanctum and the Ancient One's former students were trying to attack. By the time that Strange and Baron Mordo got there, everything was already destroyed, you know? So Strange turned back time to try and fix everything, and somehow the Ancient One's former student was able to force himself into the space outside of the spell, if you know what I mean. When Strange performed the spell, he made sure that he wasn't affected by it, and neither was Mordo. And then after the rubble was everything was being lifted off of everyone, Strange used the spell to force Wong out of it too, to be with them, unaffected by the spell. Um, Yeah, free of its influence, basically. Uh, and so the same thing kind of same thing kind of happened with the Ancient One's former student. He somehow forces his way out of the spell to continue the fight. Which, okay, fair enough. He's powerful apparently. Uh, but so did his. I think it was the same thing with the students. He forced them out of the spell too to continue the fight. I don't know. It's very cool sequence. And when I think about it, there must be what they said at the end of the movie. I think explains why exactly you could. But no, but that one doesn't make any sense though. I'm trying to think. Okay, well, I'm trying to say this now because it's not making sense the way I'm going back and forth like this. The Eye of Agamotto, I mentioned it can control time. The Eye of Agamotto is actually the time gem, or the time stone, one of the Infinity Stones. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is focusing on the Infinity Stones and leading up to the to Infinity War, the final battle the final battle against Thanos. And finally, the Time Stone, I'm pretty sure it's the Time Stone because it's control time anyway, is what was revealed. Is what was just revealed. The Eye of Agamotto is an Infinity Stone. With that much power to control time, it would make sense that Strange could use it completely to again restore the missing pages out of the book he was studying with, or mess around with the apple he was eating, or turn back all the time and destruction of that Hong Kong city. Hong Kong is a city. Settlement, whatever, wherever they were, area. And it makes sense that he will be able to force people in and out of the spell, being affected by it or being not affected by it. But that doesn't really make sense for why the Ancient One's former student can force himself out of the spell as well. Like somehow he was conscious enough to realize that Strange was using this sort of time spell to reverse all the damage that they did during the fight and restore the Hong Kong Sanctum Sanctorum. But somehow he forced his way. Somehow he was conscious doing that, aware that what was happening, and then forced himself out of the spell so he could fight them again. If this isn't an Infinity Stone, how could he have done that though? The Infinity Stones are way too powerful to be for any sort of base. And no matter how powerful sorcerer you are, I think you shouldn't be able to affect the stone. You should be stuck in the spell. But he forced his way out of the spell and continued to fight until they finally defeated him. Uh, no, not defeated. No, he was. No. How that ended was that Strange jumped into the portal where that led to the dark dimension. He jumped into the portal to confront Dormammu himself, which, well, kudos to the studio for keeping Dormammu's basic look the same. I guess maybe his older look. He kind of had these flaming face, head on fire, kind of like Ghost Rider, and like these stripes running down his face, which I'm pretty sure is his actual flesh. Honestly, is that thing? I'm pretty sure it is. It seemed like it to me anyway. He was giant and just oh so CGI. I can't disappoint in that. He looked like way too cartoonish to me. Uh, Now the way that Strange finally was able to defeat Dormammu, which considering this is Dormammu, a guy who thrives on building religions based on himself, dedicated to himself, loves to enslave people wherever he goes. Strange struck a bargain with Dormammu. Again, he put the Eye of Agamotto into overdrive, creating a time loop, which actually was foreshadowed earlier in the movie. Big way to foreshadow it too. Much better than the way Ant-Man foreshadowed its climax. The way Ant-Man did it was like way too obvious what was going to happen in the climax of that film. But for Doctor Strange, they foreshadowed a sort of time loop, and just in passing, as Wong and Mordo had discovered what Strange was doing with the Eye of Agamotto and the book he was messing around with, the Book of Dark Spells. So anyway, as Strange confronts uh, Dormammu, he traps him and Dormammu in a time loop until Dormammu will actually strike a bargain with him to leave the Earth alone in exchange for getting out of the loop. While that was ingenious, while that was a great way to go about it, I can't help but think that this is why I'm a little conflicted about it, because before we didn't find out that the Eye of Agamotto was uh, a an Infinity Stone until almost the exact end of the movie. But before that, Strange trapped Dormammu in a time loop, and I can't think as a powerful dark sorcerer as Dormammu is, a simple time loop should be easy enough to break out of. I would think you think that any sort of time loop could be easy for him to break out of. He shouldn't have to strike a bargain without Strange at all, or any one period. But he couldn't. He had to strike the bargain with Strange, leave the Earth, and also take his followers with him, the Ancient One's former student and his minions with him. That's how they were beaten. Uh, but knowing that it is an Infinity Stone makes that scene a little more believable. Uh, I don't know. I don't know. But I don't know, I'm conflicted because I don't think Dormammu should be able to break out of a time loop so easily. But again, it's the time stone. But then again, like, I don't know. The whole point of having the whole point of having the Infinity Gauntlet is like you have all five gems together. Uh, Mind, soul, power, time, space. I think it's mind, soul, time, power, space, time, space, time, space, soul, mind, power. Okay, yeah, that should be five of them. The power gem actually increases the power of the other four gems. So, mm, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see like exactly what the limits of the Infinity Stones in the Marvel Cinematic Universe are exactly. Because like I said, a time loop should be easy enough for Dormammu to break out of, especially someone who's as ancient as powerful as he is. He is a sorcerer himself. A time loop, really? He can't break out of that. But again, I mean, I think at the very least the show showed him trying to break out the time loop. Like as he realized it was a time loop, they probably showed him thinking, "Well, you can't stop me. A time loop, really? You can think that can stop me? That's not gonna stop me." Show him trying to break out the time loop, then realizing he can't break out of it, and then going, "Okay, fuck, fine. What is it? What do you want? End this. I don't want this anymore. End this. I don't know how you're doing this, but stop it." I think that would have been a little better than just having, "Oh, it's a time loop. Ah, shit. All right, what do you want? I don't like this happening over and over again. What do you want?" I mean, initially, Dormammu didn't care. He cared, but at the same time, it's like, all that happens is that you're going to die forever and ever. This time will be established. You come, say, "I have a bargain. I kill you. You come back, say you have a bargain. I kill you. You come back. You say you have a bargain. I kill you." That's gonna happen over and over again. So I can do this forever. And Strange is pretty much like, "Well, yeah, I can do this forever too. It's a time loop. That's the point. It doesn't end until we make a bargain, until we strike a deal." So in the end, Dormammu did strike the deal. He went away forever. Forever. We'll see. He's not. I don't think he's going away forever. He took his minions with him, and departed. After this conflict, Mordo had decided that he was going to leave the Order. You see, earlier in the film, we discovered that the Ancient One and I don't know if this is true for the comics. Again, I said this earlier in the video. I don't really read Doctor Strange's comics, but I am going to check him out more. Um, as it turns out in the movie, in order to keep herself living forever, for centuries upon centuries, the Ancient One was actually drawing power from the Dark Dimension, just as her former students were. The same power that they were deriving to do everything they were doing, all the darkness and evil that they were doing, that was the same power that she was pulling on as well. And discovering that really shook Mordo's faith. Like again, I said before, Strange says he has a photographic memory, so he can just glance over anything and remember it instantly. When he restored those 2 pages from the book he was studying out of, he glanced at them for a second and realized something in that instant. And then a little later on, he confronted the Ancient One about this. Mordo absolutely wouldn't believe it, but when they had that conflict with the Ancient One's former students in the middle of New York, speaking of which, that was Stan Lee's cameo right there. Strange was thrown up against in the mirror dimension, which is separate from the actual physical plane, fighting against the Ancient One's former students and everything, collapsing space and the buildings around them and everything. Strange got thrown up against the side of a bus, and that was Stanley's cameo. He's sitting there reading a book or something and laughing at what he was looking at, what he was reading. Kind of funny because I actually forgot all about his cameos in the movie. Somehow when I watch the movie, I always forget about his cameos. Then he comes up, and I'm like, "Hey, Stan Lee, huh? That's great." But anyway, during that conflict, that's when the truth was that's when the cat was out of the bag. Very clearly, the same sort of markings you could see on the Ancient One's former students. A small little version of it was on the Ancient One's face, and that's a Mordo realized that what Doctor Strange was saying was true. That despite the Ancient One's teachings, basically it was a do as I say, not as I do situation. Do as I say, don't use the dark powers, don't use the any sort of energy or anything from the dark dimension, don't use any dark magic or anything. Don't do any of that. But also don't mind the fact that I'm doing it. Well, it was a secret anyway. And the whole kind of justification. Well, I had to do it because sometimes we have to break the rules, and we have to bend the rules or break the rules in order for the greater good. I kind of agree with that, sort of, but I don't know. It just. That explanation could just kind of seem kind of like a cop out in the Ancient One to me. But anyway, it was that instance, plus at the end of the film again, when Strange used the Agamotto to reverse the damage done in the city to restore the lives of the people who were killed during that conflict, to defend the Sanctum Sanctorum and to restore the Hong Kong Sanctum Sanctorum. It was after that the Ancient One's lies and violations of their teachings, plus the fact that they used the power of time, this weird dark spell, to violate the laws of nature and everything, which is too much for Mordo. So he decided that he had enough of the entire order that they were part of. He left in that instant, just walked away from it. Well, again, from a little that I do know, Baron Mordo is indeed a Doctor Strange villain. And this comes full circle with the second bonus ending of the movie, where we see Mordo confront the patient who fixed himself, who originally went to fix the nerve damage to his body that Strange himself had talked to for advice. As it turns out, what that man had done is actually use the magic that was taught to him to make his body move again. Which is for the most part what Strange was doing. He went to go and use magic to fix his hands, which by the end of the film still were not fixed. His hands still shake a lot. But, I wonder if that's from the injury, or maybe he's just scared about he has done. The sort of world that he's finally joined, being a sorcerer and everything now. I wonder. But anyway, Mordo confronts the patient who fixed his body using magic, and somehow stole the magic out of his body, crippling the man again. When he left, between when Mordo left and when he confronted his, as a matter of fact, the guy was an old friend of his too, from when he was up in Kathmandu studying magic, which makes it even worse, honestly. Mordo had come to a sort of realization between when he left and when he confronted his old friend that, no, it very much seems that Mordo is going to go on some sort of rampage, taking out as many sorcerers as he can possible. In his own words, what's wrong with the world, paraphrasing a little bit here, but what's wrong with the world is that there are too many sorcerers. So now he's at a sort of complex that he's not, from what I can infer, now Mordo has this complex that he has to get rid of all the sorcerers in the world, at least most of them. And like I said, Mordo is a Doctor Strange villain. When I realized that he was Mordo, that the actor playing him was Mordo, I was like, yeah, this isn't going to go well. He's going to do something. And wouldn't you know it, he did. Reminds me of what Green Lantern did. In fact, I just want to talk about it a lot, as a matter of fact. Reminds me of what Green Lantern did. For anyone who knows the comics, you'll know that Sinestro is a Green Lantern villain. And the bonus scene for Green Lantern showed Sinestro donning the yellow lantern ring that they created and changing the look of his entire suit. Which honestly, I think Sinestro looks a lot better in yellow and black than green and black, but that's just me. I think the time movie was great, honestly. I think Doctor Strange was really great. It's the kind of movie where it's in stark contrast to the movies before it, where yes, all those movies are fantastic in their own way, but Doctor Strange is magic based, right? It's all magic. It's all spectacle. It's all about making everything look flashy and shiny, which is the same route that Green Lantern tried to go, but somehow they fucked that up. Green Lantern is this almost sci-fi. I'm pretty sure you probably classify Green Lantern as sci-fi for the most part. This sci-fi movie that takes place mostly in space. You have these fantastic environments and creatures and aliens and everything. So Green Lantern was supposed to be done in stark contrast to Man of Steel and the Dark Knight trilogy, where those are grounded in reality for the most part and have some sort of level of realism to them. Green Lantern was supposed to be this fantastic, visually assaulting? Maybe not assaulting, but visual spectacle. I guess similar in scope to what we saw with the Thor movies. And I mean, I think Doctor Strange is just like another sign of Marvel just hitting it out of the park once again. They went the opposite direction with the previous movies, where, I mean, granted, these are superhero movies. They're not realistic in the slightest, But again, Doctor Strange it's like a 1 degree separated, being rooted in magic rather than technology with Iron Man and Thor, which apparently Thor, in the movies anyway, Thor is like super science based. Like it is technology that they use in the movies for Thor and the other Asgardians. It just looks like magic. That side, it's not Banner being transformed by radiation. It's not Captain America with the super soldier serum. It's not any of that. This is pure magic. And while all those movies were visually stunning, again, being rooted in magic, Doctor Strange had to be even more visually stunning. Had to be even more visually appealing and out there and very kind of psychedelic in a way. And they did it, And like if Green Lantern was DC's attempt for a sort of psychedelic imagery, based, a psychedelic imagery based movie, then Doctor Strange was Marvel's attempt at a psychedelic imagery based movie, and Marvel did it properly. And it was, it was just fantastic, really. It was a great movie. I do have a couple of nitpicks with it here and there, like what I said. Like I still say Mordo should be able to break out, but again, it is an Infinity Stone. It is the time gem. He should be. I'm just not sure. We have to see what the limitations exactly for the Infinity Stones in the movies are going to be. Like I said, a couple of games that I had that I'm still a little conflicted on. The fact that Strange said he studied for years and years and practiced to become a surgeon, yet he also has a photographic memory, so that kind of defeats the purpose of him studying for years and years and years. He could just glance through each page and then been done with medical school. Well, he does mention he got his MD and his PhD like the same year. I think it's like I want to say he's 24 when he got whatever. Same year because of his photographic memory, just scanning the books for a second and then being done. It did one thing I think to do with the plot of the movie on. Actually, it's not even the plotting it. It's just a little weird. Uh, when they were operating on the Ancient One, spoiler alert. When they were operating on the Ancient One, for a second, Strange put on his gloves, and I thought for that second that this is gonna be more that Strange actually gets himself together and saves his hands finally to operate on the Ancient One himself, but he doesn't. He's in the operating room for some reason, and then tells another doctor, you have to do this thing because I can't do it. Then hands him the scalpel. You would have thought that was the moment that he would finally actually get his act together and steady his hands. I keep touching my hands. I don't know why. The hands are the whole theme of the movie. Or you would have thought that at the end of the movie, that when Strange is looking at his now still broken watch that his sister gave him, that he would finally get his hands steady again, but he doesn't. And again, I'm wondering. I'm wondering if his hands will ever recover, or if they're saving that for the next Avengers movie. And then he finally gets everything together and gets his hands steadied and fixed completely. Because in the comics, they are fixed completely. It's completely done. They're healed until Hulk crushes them in World War Hulk. Yeah, that sucks. Yeah, we'll see if he does that later on in the Avengers movies. But yeah, it definitely was a great movie. I definitely liked it better than I liked Ant-Man, honestly. And that's probably gonna be a little controversial. Everyone loves Ant-Man. I liked Ant-Man. It was okay. Very cliche. Little. I think Ant-Man was a little too predictable for me, but I still liked it. Doctor Strange, like I said, I've always been fascinated with magic. I've always loved magic, so I gravitated. I got into the movie very, very quickly. Again, visually it was amazing. They could have had a lot more variety with the magic that they used. And Doctor Strange as a character, am very much liking. He's just this egotistical jackass who was humbled in such a broad way. And throughout the movie, he's constantly humbled here and there. Bring him down to this, which actually kind of explains his character in the comic books too. In the comics, he does seem quite somber to me, and like he's had so many sobering experiences that he's not depressed or anything, but like he has this clarity to himself and the world around him that he never had before. It's because of the events that led up to him becoming a sorcerer and his training as a sorcerer and his early days as a sorcerer that kind of shaped him to how he is now. Whenever I see him pop up in a comic in a major way. So, movie was great. I'm definitely gonna read his comics a lot more. I'm definitely getting into him a lot more, and hopefully we see Dormammu again and Baron Mordo, and even Shuma Gorath. Oh yikes! That's gonna be a bastard and a half. I will say, as much as I like Doctor Strange, while I would love to see a sequel to it, there are too many movies right now. We have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 gonna come out next year. Ant Man and the Wasp is gonna come out soon. I love to see the sequel to Doctor Strange. I love to see a sequel, honestly, but there are too many movies right now, unfortunately. They canceled the Inhuman movies because, well, Human movie, the Inhumans, yes, the Inhumans movie. Unfortunately, because of various reasons. One, I think too many films in the cinematic universe already, and two, because and I still haven't fucking seen the Agents of Shield. Apparently, a few Inhumans have actually shown up already in the show, so they're like, "Oh fuck it, humans are already there in the show. We'll just use them in the TV shows. Fuck it, the movie. We're done. We're done with the movie. Let's not do the movie at all." Actually, but again, great movie. I very much enjoyed it. We could have a sequel, but if we don't do a sequel, that's fine with me. Just next time we see Doctor Strange, more variety in what he does. These are his early days as a sorcerer. I want to see like later on as he's helping Thor and Loki for some reason, and in the first bonus ending of the movie, find Odin, which probably is he's probably not gonna do much though, honestly. Um, Thor Ragnarok is supposed to be like sort of like described as like a buddy cop film with Thor and Hulk. Uh, if Strange is in that movie, it's probably just gonna be a little more than being a supporting character. But it'd be cool to see him again. That's for sure, right? But anyway, I like the movie. Tell me what you think. Did you like it? No? Yes? Did you like it as much as I did? Did you not like it at all? Do you think I'm wrong for saying Ant Man was only okay? It was only okay. I mean, yeah, it was predictable. It was. I get that. It was kind of predictable on purpose, but. Yeah, I think Doctor Strange was better, honestly. But, whatever the case, let me know in the comments. Uh, and I'll talk to you guys later.